Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Barry Kostrinsky. This is the ATOA, Artist Talk on Art, and this is part of our Monday night virtual open studios, where we invite artists to share and present about their art. This is our unique response to COVID and not being able to gather together. We have always been presenting in New York City since 1975. The ATOA is a nonprofit, a 501c3. We hope to go back to our location at 12 West 12th Street, but we are going to wait to get the all clear, and obviously things look like they've changed a little. For now, this is our format. We're here every Monday. We welcome you to submit ideas for talks, or to say you'd like to be on a talk. Just reach out to me through the website, atoanyc.org. You can see all the information there. We have an exciting and quite a unique program tonight. The ATOA is showing Sebastian Sevigny, Sebastian Sevigny, Undine Groeger, and Marc Josloff. And what's unique in there, we have one artist that is a preteen, and I usually don't introduce the artist, but I want to say, once when I was walking in the Whitney, I saw a kid sitting down and drawing at the Whitney Biennale. And being who I am, I naturally went up, introduced myself, and spoke to him. And that might have been 3 years ago or so. And since then, I've watched his Instagram. And just like getting to know any artist and watching their work progress over time, especially 10 years or something like that, to watch Seb's work progress is really interesting. It's really enjoyable. And also, I wanted him to be a part of a larger artist network. We've been a very supportive group. We all share, we all applaud, we all give positive comments, we all give advice, we all ask very specific questions, whether it's about materials or personality, things like that. And I think you know, artist is a big term, and Seb is welcome and a part of that group. Any artist who comes from Canada to go to New York City to draw at the Whitney qualifies in my book. So we have a great group tonight. We're gonna start with Seb. I just want to ask Michael, are you set to screen share? Let's get Michael to unmute.
I can screen share, but I don't have those files that you asked me to download, or I couldn't find that email with the attachment.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll do it on my screen on my end. Wish me luck. So first I'm going to look to pop it up, and then Seb, I'll hand it over to you, but bear with me one sec as I try and screen share myself, and this should work. Let's see.
We're still hearing a dog.
Yeah, euthanasia is not allowed, so no, I can't do that. Bear with me as I get to where I want to go here. Let's see. Can everybody see welcome to my presentation?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but you have to click on present.
Yes, I can see it.
Click on present. Let's see.
I think I'm spotlighted, Barry, or pinned.
Oh, wait, bear
No,
with
it's
me.
in the top right corner.
Oh, okay. Bear with me.
You have to go back to the slides.
Okay. I just want to do one thing. Michael, I am going to send this over to you again, so check your email. I'll certainly start the presentation, but once you get this, you could sort of bail me out of it. You want me to go back here? You want me to go back?
And then in the top right corner, it should say present.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
So welcome, Sebastian. You're coming in from Canada. Feel free to tell us a little bit about yourself, anything, go through your presentation. Our group knows to jump in and ask questions, and I'll hopefully be reading the responses as well from our chat. So welcome, and a pleasure to have you join us. So
Yes, thank you for having me. So, ever since I was young, even when I was a toddler, I always liked to draw. When I was a toddler, no, can you go back to the other slides?
Oh, it's fine.
oh, sorry, pardon me. Michael, I hope you're going to be getting this.
No, back to the beginning.
I know. I'm not getting the buttons I want. Bear with me, guys.
You have to drag your mouse down into the left corner, bottom corner.
Okay.
When in doubt, ask a tween.
No, I love it. I'm going to do it the easy way. I had to stop it. Michael, you get my email?
Yeah. Just give me a second. I'll share screen.
Better to do. Sorry.
I
Because
don't
what
know.
happens is I don't get full access to my screen when that happens.
Hold on, let me figure out how to do this here.
When I was in-
And I want to thank the other presenters. I do want to say it takes a little bit of chutzpah, as we might say, to go ahead and mix a child in with mature artists. But Undine and Marc were very welcoming, and that's something I really like to see. So thank you.
Okay, so as I was saying, when I was a toddler, I always liked to draw. And even my kindergarten teacher, she was worried about me because I didn't like to play with the other kids, and I would always be drawing at the drawing table. Okay, next slide, please. So when I was younger, there was an art contest at my local library where you had to draw what the library meant to you. And the picture in the middle at the top is a picture of me when I was about 6 years old with the mayor holding my drawing. Yeah, because I won. And the others are drawings that I did also when I was younger, like the trumpet I made for my grandfather, and because he is a musician, and the two birds I drew at my art class with my art teacher, whose name is Renata. And the third one, the last one in the corner, that's the car I just drew for fun at home. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are pictures from me when I was in New York of me drawing. The one on the far right corner is me drawing at the Whitney where I met Barry. And the other pictures are just me drawing at museums and other places. And the one in the middle at the bottom is me drawing at a pizza place waiting for my food in New York. Next slide, please. And these are drawings and sketches and scratchboard that I did recently. That I've done recently, and they're all birds because I really like to sketch and draw birds because I like how they look and just the shape that they are. Next slide, please. And these are other drawings that I've done. Some of them are recent and some of them are from a few years ago. The two dragons that you see, the first one on the top, I did probably when I was about 10 years old, and it was referenced from a picture that I found in a book. The other dragon that you see was one from last year when the pandemic started that I referenced from my phone. And I also draw still life, like flowers or leaves. And I also draw other animals, not only birds. Next slide, please. And these are more drawings that I've done in recent years, like a leopard, the first one. The second one is Venom from a movie. And the third one is an abstract one with planets that I just thought would look cool. And the fourth one is one that I did probably a couple of weeks ago of a Hydra. And I got inspiration from a movie that I watched recently of Godzilla. The fifth one is a hummingbird that I drew for my grandmother. And the sixth one is for another contest of the agenda of my school, and I won. And the seventh one is a scratchboard art that I haven't finished yet, but it's of a tiger. Next slide, please. And this is the stage of when I started drawing a cartoony style that I call fan art. Yeah, and it was about 2 years ago. And the ones that you see that don't have color, that will not have as much color, are before I got my Prismacolor, not Prismacolors, my Copics, which are drawing pens that I really like, and I use them if I ever want to draw color.
Excuse me, Seb, your hand is doing things with the microphone.
Oh, okay. Do you need me to repeat?
No, that's better.
No.
That's excellent.
Okay. Okay, next slide, please. So this is what I've been mostly doing during the pandemic. It's a digital art that I make on my computer, and it's made for a video game called Roblox that I play. It's game icons, profile pictures, and game thumbnails. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. And this is more, and I recorded myself on the computer making this GFX, which stands for graphic effects, which is the name of the art that I did on the computer. So you can scan the QR code or type in that link in your browser to watch the video. Next slide, please.
1 second, I'm just.
And don't forget to follow me on Instagram. This is the account that I post my GFX on. And you can also follow my other Instagram account where I post my other art on. You can change slides, please. And this is mine that I post my normal art on, called Art by Seb. Next slide, please. Oh, no, never mind, there's no more. So thank you for listening to me. And do you have any questions? Well, does anyone have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Let's first applaud what we just saw. A very professional presentation in so many ways.
Thank you.
Go ahead and go ahead. I'm sorry to have interrupted.
Sorry. Seb, how are you influenced by COVID? How are you doing, and how are you surviving it? And do you think it's changing your artwork in any way?
No, not really, because I mostly just stay home and I draw and I do the GFXs as you saw before, and it's not really affecting me that much because I never really went anywhere before, except for New York, which I go every spring, and I miss that.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Who are your favorite artists?
I don't really have any favorites. I like all art, but I especially like sketch art and ink.
I do want to read from the comments. Elaine Forrest says, wonderful presentation with the images on the page. That is a smart way to get multiple images around the theme on one page. Very smart to do that. Also, Elaine says, you really capture the essence of the animal. And I love your color sense with your digital art. Congratulations, Sebastian. Yeah, and I have to say, in the 6 or 7 or 8 slides that you showed, you actually showed an evolution in your artwork, and you're only 12. And, you know, that's a lot. And it's beautiful to see you branch out. I will say those birds and animals that you did, especially the birds, where you do all that repetitive line and then change it, you create a texture that I think everybody here who draws really is envious of. And that's not, you know, that's a mature texture. The image we use, that one big Hydra eagle mix, you know, that had everything in it that a contemporary artist liked. You have your drawing skill, you have your realism, but then you went phantasmagorical and you mixed in Hydra heads. And, you know, you worked close enough and brought the figure close that we get lost at points, and we're happy to, and we don't sort of know this is an animal, and we're enjoying all your different sort of geometric play, which of course is coming off a natural form. So I applaud you, and your coloration is quite strong, especially on that hummingbird and all those objects where it was obvious you changed. You said you, I want to catch it right here. When you went to cartoon, your color sort of explodes, and that's another skill. Let me open it up to some more questions and thoughts or applause. Applause is always welcome. Undine, who will be presenting next, says, I'm very proud of you, Seb, and how you document and archive your art at such a young age, Sebastian. Bravo. Yoram Gelman says, those birds, those subtle shades, just wonderful. I think everybody feels the same. You've presented as a mature artist, and we've all learned a little from you, and I hope you've learned a little from us and maybe from the other presenters. I can't thank you enough, and of course your mother, for putting this together and always being the liaison. I want to say Seb does not run his Instagram account at this age. His mother does. It's very respectful. And also his parents are in the arts. And so, you know, it's nice to see a mother drive with a son for so many hours to go to the Whitney, you know, way south, so to speak. So thank you, Seb. Thanks for your time. Thanks for sharing with us. And you really, your art is not only mature, but you present in a very mature way.
Thank you. Also, my parents are also in the arts. My grandparents. My grandfather is a composer who makes music and art like mixed together, and my grandmother is a singer.
Yes, I have a question, Seb. How would you like to see yourself at the age of 21?
I'm not really sure yet.
Okay, that's fine. All right, how about 18?
Well, I think then I'll be studying arts and maybe trying to make some video games too. Because right now I'm also interested in creating video games, and I'm not doing too bad.
Very good, thank you.
I have to say, if you notice, as artists of our age, we ask questions like influence and what's going to come. But Seb is in his moment. He's doing his thing as he sees. There are no influence. There are the birds, there are parents, there are those subtle influences. And as far as the future, that's not now. So I think Seb he's really focused in the now, and it's, you know, I think it's great as well that you're doing digital work, because as all artists will tell you, very hard to make it in just fine arts, but to be able to do both, digital can go quite far for you. And it's another skill. another skill to mix together and to play with. Treat it like toys. It's nice to see your passion, and very nice, very nice.
Thank you.
May I just say something?
Always, by the way, anybody can always say something. I appreciate the kind entrance, and you can always break in too.
Thank you. I missed your art, but I did see it on the flyer. You are an extremely talented person, and you say that you'll use your skills for perhaps video games. May I also suggest that you use your skills in some way to help repair the world that you're and we are all waking up to? There are so many things that could use your art as we teach people about climate change, as we teach people to become caring communities. So earn your living, but also help repair the world that you wake up to.
Okay, I'll make sure to do that.
Thank you so much.
What a beautiful thought. Sort of, we all know the future is in the next generation's hands. It always is. We always improve slightly, hopefully. And it is up to your generation, Seb. And we haven't given you you're not starting off with 3 aces in a poker game. You're starting off with like a 2, 5, and a 9. But we have hope in this group, and seeing your artwork like that can change things too. Just stay committed. Very nice to see. Any other thoughts? Of course, we always welcome comments. And thanks for sharing about your family, Seb. Very nice. I think another round of applause. That was very well deserved. Next, we'll go to Undine Groeger. And I'm sorry, you'll see we do have information about the talk up. We have spelled your wrong name. It's Undine. Undina's a photographer. I'll let her sort of jump in and say everything and introduce herself, but I think you're in for a treat. She has diverse work, and as we all know, in 15 or 20 minutes, you're gonna get one segment of an artist's work at best. And Undine, from what I've seen, there's lots to say and lots of content. So welcome and thank you for your time.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Before I present myself a bit more detail, I've thought to jump into slideshow where I just explain sort of more broadly of what my artwork is mainly about. And thanks so much, Seb, again, for presenting. I'm already a big fan. I had the pleasure and the honor to teach children of your age, a bit younger, 10-year-olds, 7 to 10-year-olds throughout the entire pandemic, and as a visual arts teacher. And I love seeing the progression. I love seeing the archival process that you went through with your mom to make sure that you keep your artwork. So it's all these things that I'm always encouraging my students to do. So again, bravo. Voila. I will share my screen. Let's see, let's hope for the best for this first slide. See, here it is. Everybody sees, bear with me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going into full screen. All right. So I'm just going to let this flow, and I'm sharing with you over this slideshow a few things of what my art is about globally, or more broadly. So bear with me has 2 different meanings for me and my artwork. As you can imagine, somebody has been sitting next to me at the beginning. He will be back with you soon. My teddy bear Brummel, who's been with me since I was little, and who has been with 3 women in my family. So my grandmother, my mother, and I. But bear with me also means bear with me and creating spaces where we can bear with each other and listen to each other. So My photography is mainly about creating spaces where we can bear with each other, share vulnerability and ruptures, talk about identity and representation, cleanse and create flow, shed and root or reroute, listen and be the witness or be witnessed, remember, honor, and revive. Embrace our bodies for what they are, breathe, ponder, and share moments of waiting, fears, and moments that we witness or experience that are about life or death. Overcoming the seemingly impossible, feeling, longing, the hope, and also believing in ourselves and feeling empowered. As much as it is about dreaming and coming back to what is there and where we came from, and remember who we are and who our ancestors were. So I stop sharing screen so that I make sure, let me check. Okay, just stop for a moment. So this is what my artwork is broadly about. It's not always the happiest, but my artwork always aims at giving hope and healing, and mainly looking into reconciliation. And I use photography mainly, and also video art, as a way to speak the unspoken, but also to play and find moments to create rituals. And so that the subject feels honored and also can feel a facilitation of change, if possible, or seeing themselves in a different light. So I want to, and all of this comes from a story, from a personal story of how I work, the whole methodology, how I go about it. And what I'm going to talk mainly about today is the theme of walls. So again, Sebastian, I'm coming back to you because you're 12 years old now. And I think the work that I'm doing today has been very much influenced by what I experienced when I was 10 years old. For good reasons, and for reasons that I needed to understand and needed to figure out over the past, I would say 14 years. And there were moments in my life that allowed me to go back to that moment. And I'm going to share a little bit about that. So bear with me a second. Just want to make sure that I have the right next. Yeah, I do have it open. Okay. You just make this bigger. Okay. All right. So here, Seb, here we go again. I've been very honored to be a teacher over this last year, and this is how I look. This is something that I've done on tile that was facilitated by another teacher, Anne Francie. It was a mural, and again, it's about walls. We're building a mural to connect and to honor also and remember that moment that we all lived together. So I was doing this with the J4s. I had prepared them for this work, and we were allowed to share our own vision as well. And this is how I saw myself over the last year, mainly teaching, not remotely, but in school, which was a great chance for the children as well to do their work in the classroom. Now, at the same time, this pandemic led me back to my own childhood and the memories. So I will be talking about a very specific wall, but also how that physical wall, when it fell, created other walls. So today I find myself in the United States, and at least there's a feeling, and I'm sure all of you can feel that feeling of separation from loved ones who might be far away. My family is in Germany, and I haven't seen them for the last 3 years. Circumstances of migration and then the pandemic hitting made it not possible for me to return. And at the same time, it reminds me of when part of my family was on one side of the Berlin Wall and other side, and then some part of the family was on the other side of, I wouldn't say the Berlin Wall, but the wall that separated Germany at one point. So before I go more into that, I wanted to share with you that today I am a photographer and a videographer, also a teacher, educator. And my background is also in humanitarian work. So I joined the humanitarian work, which actually led me to photography. I worked for NGOs as well as the UN. And during that time, I worked a lot in human trafficking, fighting modern slavery, and mainly in Eastern Europe. I was sent there because of my background. So at that time, I had a chance to document with the UN, this was in Georgia, the life there, and also show the International Labour Organization's work. So this was commissioned work. I was a project manager at the same time, but was sent there as well. And this work was shown in a gallery in Tbilisi in 2009. And back to today, where I was preparing last weekend, this talk for Barry, and Barry and I had spoken before the weekend as well. And I said to Barry, this wall, the theme of walls is really something that has touched me deeply and I experienced in many ways, but also it seems to be following me, the theme. And without my knowing, this weekend, I was in Kent, in the area of Kent, and I biked up this enormous hill that we hadn't foreseen to bike up. We stopped in the middle of it, and there was a guy cutting his apple trees, and he turns to me and he's like, "Oh, wow. Well, you know, this hill is called the Wall." And I said, "Of course it is." So that's just a little to lighten up the conversation. But the summer that really changed my life was in 1989. And also on my bike ride at the end of this weekend, and I didn't take a picture of it, sorry, Barry, but ironically or not, I crossed the bridge on my bike. That was the last bridge, and it said 1989. So walls aren't always about separation, but also an opportunity to bridge. Yet there's a process, things that we need to work through. So in summer 1989, this is me, my brother, and my mom. I had no idea what was going to happen after summer. We were sent to my grandparents at that time, and my mother and my other grandmother were allowed for the very first time to see family in West Germany. Not for the very first, for the second time to see family in West Germany in 1989. My father had to, in East Germany, you were asked to, you kind of were drawn into the army, sort of available. So he was drawn into the army during that summer as well. And so they said, okay, you guys stay with my family, with my grandparents of my father's side. And during that summer, actually, I picked up for the first time, in hindsight, I've been realizing all this, like a camera. And I photographed the home of my grandparents then. This was not in Berlin, but in Heiligenstadt, near Erfurt. And it became like a double exposure. Maybe there was a double meaning, but looking at this photo today, I realized that was one of my very first photographs on a film camera, and it meant home. And I'm realizing how much home and family is part of what I'm photographing, and what has allowed me to also photograph other family stories. So as you all, or who remembers the fall of the Berlin Wall? Barry, where were you at that time? Do you remember?
I don't remember, but there's that iconic image of people smashing this large cement wall at night, and the graffiti that was on the wall. I remember that image, maybe just because it's so hard to knock down a wall, and that's both metaphorically and physically.
Yeah.
Just looked like such a task.
Does anybody else remember where they were, what they were doing?
Yes,
what they were thinking?
I remember it very well. I was home on a recuperation, and as the wall came down, and the way the East Germans were welcomed into West Germany, and it's like a real, I can't just say brothers and sisters, and they were giving them money, to spend, and they were welcoming them like what they really were, a long lost family. And it was such a beautiful sight to see. Of course, I think it was Reagan that said, tear down this wall. And they did. And a lot of people were killed trying to get over the wall. And even an East German soldier, when no one was looking at him, jumped over the wall, complete with his gun and everything. But once he was on the other side, nobody could do anything about it. Nobody could shoot him. But it was so heartwarming, this reunion, the breaking down. And just something that you said, I had to write down, that walls not only divide, they could also be a bridge. Now, to me, it's a profound statement. It really is.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Tell me your name again. I don't see it right now. Sorry, it showed up earlier, but what's your name again?
Richard.
Richard. Thank you, Richard.
I will say, Undine, when I heard you describe your work earlier, rooting, rerouting, identity, representation, it was almost like a poetry there, and it made me think, have you ever integrated words into your work, or do you like to keep that separate?
So I have to admit that these streams of thoughts or these streams of poetry, they just come and then they go. So I'm a much more visual person, but I do write. If things come down, I write it down. But whenever I want it to come down, then it's not downloading. But yes, I love, I've been writing a few things with regards to my images, but often not in the moment I'm making them. It often comes much later, or I need to sit on it. But yes, I do love to integrate that. I'm working a lot with audio, so I have other people still tell me their stories, because I want to, each image that I'm creating, at least that's what I'm aiming for, is based on their story. So even if you see a portrait, it's a portrait that I created with them, be it my mother, be it my grandmother, but also be it, I think even more importantly, but I think it has to start within the family, that kind of integrity. But I'm, especially when I'm doing it with people who I actually don't know, but I want to share their story. It's very important that I respect their story, because as we all know, narratives can be distorted. And so I'm trying to keep that, and also how they want to be seen. So this one also is an image that I created because I wanted to kind of mark this memory. There were moments I regretted didn't have a camera, really, like wasn't photographing as much during this time, and also the time passed by so fast. And asked my parents, do you have photographs from that time, because they photographed a lot. I have 3 photo albums, but they stopped. It's almost like they stopped when the wall fell. And I said, what happened? So my parents were saying, my mom realized that they just were so busy with the new life and the transition that they just stopped photographing. All we have was when I lived in a skyscraper, when they started renovating it, things were torn apart. I mean, there's a lot of celebration, as we all remember, of the fall of the Berlin Wall. And yet there was also a lot of things that were literally falling apart. And I had a lot of friends leaving immediately, not coming back. Some were coming back, then leaving for good. We left 3 years later, and then just life continued. And it actually hit me. So this photo I created, and many others, because I wanted to reconcile with that past and understand what happened during this time, because basically this image represents the moment my mom said to me, I woke up, it was on November 9th, 1989. I was 10 years old. It was a gray morning, I remember. There was a lot of fog. So you couldn't see, literally couldn't see. But you also wouldn't know what's next. So this was, for me, it's still in my mind. And my mom said, well, 2 weeks later, she would say, we're going to cross the wall. The wall fell. And I'm like, which wall? I got so nervous that, because I'd never seen the wall, although I was living in Berlin, or I thought I had never seen. Later, I understood that I had been cycling along the Mauerstreifen, as we say in German, the wall strip, and there were fences. So not the wall wasn't, as we may all think, now we know better, like there's a lot of documentation on it. It wasn't just a wall of cement, but there were fences that were the wall. There were checkpoints, there were forests, and then there was, of course, also the death strip. So afterwards, I realized, oh, I was biking along the edge of East Berlin. I didn't know. But basically, I hadn't seen it, and I was very nervous. And then we went in our Trabant, as you can see here. This is the Trabant. It's a toy car here. But we crossed the wall. In my mind, of course, in my child's mind also, I imagine it like this. This photo was taken when I was 30 years old. So 2009, 20 years later. And we crossed the Berlin Wall to West Berlin in the Trabant. It was the people's car. Of those who know, we call it Trabi, like very nice, small. And my dad actually sold it for 1 Deutschmark, because everybody was, at that time, everything was just, as I tell you, everything was just going for, he was, luckily through his work, he was given a new car. Both of my parents were engineers. So they managed to transition, or luckily we managed to transition well. But at some point, I think 2 years in, I can't remember fully, but somebody knocked on our door, came to get the Trabant, and I remember he handed over 1 Deutschmark to get my dad's Trabant. And later on, now it's very hard to get one in Berlin. If you've been to Berlin, you can do the Trabi safari. But I better move on, because otherwise this talk is about Trabis. It can be. So when I was really I feel given the chance, or by chance given the chance, to reconcile with my past, was when I was sent to a territory in Eastern Europe that is until today a breakaway republic between Moldova and Ukraine. Is a non-existent territory. We call it the Black Hole. And this is where I was seeing almost time stood still, because it's a frozen conflict zone. I was working there as a humanitarian and started taking photos. And I didn't understand at first what I was 100% doing, but I felt a strange feeling of belonging for a very long time. Because after the wall fell, also there was this whole transition as a teenager, and then moving to West Germany and explaining your identity, or hiding your identity at times as well, that you're actually from East Germany, because of prejudices, that was also part of the transition. And yet,
Undine, I see beautiful photographs that integrate sky and the lines that you get from telephone poles, and I enjoy them very much. And I see them a lot, and they're all really strong when the artist does it right. But you've integrated, this symbol of the Russian flag, and with the lights above it, it almost reads like a cartoon figure with eyes. It takes on like another surreal quality because of that geometric box play that's holding it up. So it's, I enjoy this kind of photography very much. You've thrown in another very central object loaded with symbolism that takes it up a notch. Very nice.
That was part of. So I started documenting, and I realized things that were so much like home once was, but of course there was also a lot of nostalgia. And I realized I was starting to make sense of where I came from. And also I felt everything went so fast. Like my parents were describing, you didn't have time to take photographs. You were busy with the transition. But the reality was also that territory that I was documenting at that time, I actually continued the documentation much more rigorously after I was no longer with the NGO. So I went back there whilst I was working for the UN for my holidays to be in this frozen conflict zone and to make sense of my own identity at that time. There's also the harsh reality that it remains a frozen conflict zone until today. But it allowed me as well to go back and understand. And at that time I had a mentor, and he said, Undine, I wrote by the way, Barry, to your question earlier, I wrote a spoken word about this whole journey. It can be found online of how I really experienced this. At that time, I felt I was revisiting my childhood. I was revisiting moments that I hadn't seen for such a long time, like certain pickles. And I don't know if you've seen Goodbye Lenin. That was for me the first movie where I was able, it was more about the visualization of what I had left behind and where I'm now, and kind of bridging this. So this was again still in the breakaway republic. And I realized I had to go back home. And I think that my mentor said at that time, Undine, you're not from there. You are from Berlin. You have to go back to Berlin. At that time, I was living already in Switzerland, Geneva, working for the UN there. So I went back to Berlin, nervous of what I would find in my district. So this is actually the foundation of the district, which was founded in 1979 when I was born. And if you can discover somebody here, Teddy Bear Brummel is here as well. If you can see him. He had to, of course, go with me because he was carrying all the family history. So I went back to my district to find my old home. Oh, sorry. I go a bit forward. To find my old home, but I didn't find much there. The home had disappeared. And so I felt almost, it was like a catharsis at that moment, a second catharsis, maybe the first one I had in that territory that I didn't belong to, but that reminded me of my childhood home and was kind of reminiscent of that childhood home. And at the same time going here, I felt I didn't find what I was hoping to find. And yet there was a feeling of this feeling uprooted, that was confirmed by not finding my house anymore. This used to be my house. I started an installation. This was all in 2009. And the first person besides Tyra Brummel was also my grandmother, who stands here. She came with me. She was the first person accompanying me. And so I took these old photographs. This is also my grandmother here in the old photograph, and me at, I think, 6 years old. And so I recreated these in this space and place, trying to create these old and new memories and reconcile. And eventually all my family members came. So you see my mom, my grandmother, my dad, and my brother. And I asked them each of them to bring objects of things that remind them of that time. And I had no idea what they were going to bring. And through that, I also had to ask questions to understand why they brought certain things. Like my dad brought his LP of Michael Jackson. I said, well, Dad, why? I said, why this? He brought many other things as well, but he said, well, this was my very first LP of Western music that he was allowed to buy, officially buy, because he was, besides being an engineer, he was an underground DJ in East Berlin. So he has a lot of stories to tell, and he did in some of the exhibitions that we had. But this was his first LP that he was allowed to buy with Western music. Otherwise, he said it was always grandmothers of someone who smuggled Western music. That was often the case, Western music into East Germany, or you had to take the radio and adjust sort of the antenna in a certain way to receive these frequencies to listen to Western music. In a way, my parents and everybody brought objects that also meant resilience. And so I've been creating a traveling exhibition that is in New York at the moment as well, but hasn't been shown in New York yet. But in Europe, it's been shown and supported by international foundations and the German missions to the United Nations. And I create workshops around the theme of walls, story circles on memories of the Berlin Wall, fall of the Berlin Wall, and also workshops on people often feel, I always feel, when you see a photograph, sometimes you think, oh, this is great photographs, but sometimes you don't even want to look because it reminds you of something within you. And maybe then you're even judging the photo. So my work is a lot about not just then the subject, but also the viewer. How does the viewer feel? And how does it resonate? Does an image resonate within them? And tell me your story. What is your story? Why are you reacting in a certain way to a photograph?
And Dina, go ahead for a minute or two
Yeah.
more, and then we're going to.
So then I've brought this exhibition as well to schools, and I'm integrating different kinds of things. For example, with Teddy Bear Brummel, I'm doing workshops for younger kids. Then I'm just going quickly back. Barry told me I could go do that. My grandmother gave me actually this book, one of the booklets, where she writes how Berlin was after World War II and how she experienced it as a child. So doing this whole exhibition also helped us as a family to connect the dots and see how things maybe repeat themselves transgenerational. So my grandmother, she lost her home. She was bombarded at the time during World War II in Berlin when she was 11 years old. Fortunately, there were many other people who suffered worse crimes, especially another topic where, as Germans, we're very much aware of the reconciliation that we had to do with our own history. And this is my grandmother before World War II with the teddy bear. And this is my mother exactly in 1961 when the Berlin Wall was built with the teddy bear. So I'm integrating history and also movement of how you perceive walls. And here I did a collage with the kids. So they did like graffiti added onto the wall, what it means about breaking through walls. I'm discussing with them in their personal lives what that means. And when I came to New York, I started another project where I felt for myself, I created these safe spaces, but I went on the streets of New York and I met people randomly to kind of break this wall of sort of, oh, it's a stranger. I don't even know this person. Will this person tell me a story? So this person I met, and she told me the story of how she remembered the fall of the Berlin Wall, but she also shared her story of her own walls of Japanese incarceration in the United States. And that became a whole other big project.
Undine, is it okay if I open it up to questions? And
of course.
Okay, very good. Well, first, thank you.
Thank you for having me, Barry.
Yeah. Very nice. And let me open it up to the group. Everyone feel free to jump in with any questions or thoughts. Obviously, family is probably the number one theme that comes out of your presentation. And, you know, seeing a grown woman with a teddy bear, but then hearing how it was your grandmother's, and it's now in the archives of the ATOA, you know, and it's nice when an object sort of lives through a family. That's very nice in a way. Shall I open it up? Any thoughts?
Hey, I have a thought. I mean, not only did you show the artwork, you put yourself, so much of yourself into it.
Yeah, that was, I did, because that's how I started out, feeling why I started out with photography. And because I felt it became a tool for me, almost like therapeutic. And it took me actually to show the exhibition. The photos were all shot in 2009, but it took me actually almost 7 years, well, no, 5 years, to show the exhibition for the first time. And it meant a lot of processing and asking family members, making videos with them. But it was also a great process for me, I didn't just want to talk about myself, but I wanted to make this a way of having other people open up and be okay with sharing their stories. By sharing, I felt I could only do this because that was somehow something I was hoping to do, I was already doing, but I also felt I had to almost go myself through this process before I would be able to ask somebody else to do so.
Thank you, Undine. Thank you. And I just want to remind everybody, we are the ATOA, the Artist Talk on Art. We're here every Monday. We're a 501c3. All of our talks are free. If you'd like to contribute, you can find information on our website. And I want to thank everybody who has contributed. I like the sort of link we had with Seb, his work, and then going to you. This is all random, and you having worked with and taught kids. And of course, you're also a photographer, and we have a lot of photographers in the audience tonight because Marc Josloff is going to speak now. And Marc is both a photographer and a painter. And I'm sure a lot of the group really enjoyed your photographs, Undine, but I think you were dead on. I think it's Richard when you said this is more your story than formal photography. And like you said, your photography is a tools and a means, and maybe it's been a cathartic thing, a cathartic tool to help you work through emotions and experiences. I will say that image where you had the tripod with the mirror on top and then the photograph, it looked like a body because you had your head there, you had the wider sections. And it's nice when those things happen because you really were trying to put yourself back in. Even you were looking for your old home, it was not there, but maybe in a subliminal way, you put yourself back in that photograph, and that brought the place current to you.
Yeah, I felt that work allowed me, I know I don't want to take up more time, but that work allowed me to go into other people's stories so much more. So I showed at the International Center of Photography the extension of that work, which incorporated 21 stories of other people's walls. And I've been working since 2016 on breast cancer. Again, it started out with a family story, unfortunately. Yet, unfortunately, in a way that it was my mother who had breast cancer, and through how she worked through and how I was able to photograph her after 3 years, helped me to then engage in a 1-year project on breast cancer with 5 women in the United States in as much depth as I was able to do with my mother.
As I hinted at the beginning, you have deep bodies of work. Some of the series go for many decades. And obviously everyone reach out. Undine is on Instagram. Everyone feel free to use the chat if you want to put your Instagram, make a comment or anything else at all. Marc Josloff, it's a pleasure to have you. Marc, you show talents in both photography and painting, and I know I'm wrong when I say this, but I sort of feel people either photograph or paint. I happen to do both, but you do both very well.
Yeah, I've been told in the past, even when I had professional consultation, one thing you don't do is put your paintings and your photographs on the same website. When you have a show, don't put them both in the same show. And you know what? I just felt it didn't apply to me. And along the way, both my photography and my painting have spoken to each other in such a way that they were responsible and compatible with each other. So I wasn't going to listen to any professional advice if I didn't think it applied to me, because I'm not vested in a long-standing reputation as an artist. I do it for myself. I'm not looking to make a fortune on it. It's just mad money to pay for my art supplies. And I really make my living from teaching art and educating others. And today was a good lesson in how unique every artist really is. You broached that before, Barry. It's one of the most magical things about evolving as an artist, is to have that opportunity to see how you're different. And we all have this warehouse of experiences and memories, just as we saw with Undine. And if we don't speak through those, then our work runs the risk of being, mainstream and ordinary. But if we let it go, we express it, then it's really exciting. It makes life fun and challenging. So that's like an introduction to what I'm going to do, which is so different from what we've seen in the last 45 minutes or so. But I'll share what I have. Where is it? Why can't I find it? Okay.
Yeah, I think Mark emphasized something we all know. As tough as it is to make it as artists, you can facilitate that by teaching. And it's also quite rewarding. And it can be quite inspiring as well.
Okay, I think I'm ready to go. Now, if I didn't screw up, everybody sees out of the box on this screen.
Yeah.
Oh, thank God. The technology has me always in a state of anxiety. As a matter of fact, I worked on this Keynote program. It's like PowerPoint. And it was really just about ready, but I know I had to add things to it. I had to polish it up. And just as I was finishing up, I remembered that word of wisdom, always hit save. So I brought down the scroll. I thought I was clicking on save, but with my shaky hand, I deleted the whole thing. Somehow I must have hit delete, but I had saved it as a PDF about 10, 15 minutes before, and that's what we're going to see. Maybe a little bit imperfect, but I think it'll be serviceable. Out of the box is the theme that I chose because I find it a lot of fun to see things my own way and express them that way. As I said, sometimes my photographs out of the box lead to my painting out of the box, and vice versa, or vice versa, which is the vice versa of versa versa. I find that they go hand in hand. So you're going to be seeing both paintings and photography, and I hope that they will seem like they're interchangeable. First of all, I'd like to ask everybody, since we're not muted, when you hear the term out of the box, what does that mean to you in terms of an artist? Anybody?
To me, Mark, it means this is it, unadulterated, unbiased. This is the basis of what I have.
So we are the box, so to speak, and we're letting it out, right?
Yeah, we're letting it out, and here's our artwork. It's not for my consumption or somebody else's consumption. It's for you. This is what you want to do.
Mm-hmm. Mhm.
You know what I mean? As you had said before, you do this, for yourself here.
Yeah,
And
I agree. I think out of the box is the box of society, of our notions of what is and what's supposed to be, are thrown out. You just go out and do your own thing and enjoy it step by step.
Yes, I like that very much.
this is my
It's not exact. Go ahead, Richard.
No, I mean, this is my paint. This is me. This is me. This is Mark. This is me. This is the thing I painted.
Right.
Fresh out of the box of the paint.
So it could be confused with being creative, and sometimes they do overlap. And I would say it's maybe a smidge different from creative because you're doing things in a way that's not typically done before. And it's not necessarily as grandiose as being groundbreaking, because everything that's out of the box isn't necessarily groundbreaking. But you're just doing it because you feel you want to, because it's fun, and because it communicates something, expresses something for you in the way that you did it. So here we go.
I will jump in and say Audrey Anastasi has said beyond assumption. Beyond
Yes.
assumption. Very good.
Right. So this is what I said before. It's a little bit more than just being creative, although it overlaps. It's not necessarily groundbreaking. Do all artists think out of the box? Certainly they're all unique, but when someone does think out of the box, it's because they feel compelled to. Hopefully not just because they're trying to show off or get attention, but because it appeals to them personally. Okay, here's my first slide. It's kind of a whimsical thing. I'm showing out of the box by showing things in the box, which is out of the box because this is not what's typically photographed. So I went through my house and I found various things tucked away in boxes. I'm a semi-hoarder. I don't like to throw things away, and I find things from my past and I find them visually interesting. I try not to move them around too much to force the composition, but kind of shoot it in a natural way as it was. There's another one that's in a little dish. You could tell the age of those coins.
Yeah, Buffalo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just the fact that this box is not as structural as it started out to be, that it's leaning, and the boards, the cut pieces of board from my matting projects are also diagonal in the other direction, and we have verticals. It all of a sudden becomes about shapes, and the shapes and the directions of the shapes tell a bit of a story about me as an artist in a roundabout way. Here's a color and a sepia version of a box where I would just throw odd batteries and a little pencil sharpener up here, and you'll never guess what that is. I tried to find a way for paintings to level themselves on a wall, and I thought if I put a marble in a box and stick that to the bottom back of the painting, it will roll on the wall. There's a little bit of space around it, and it would be self-leveling. Another invention that died in a box, okay? It's a little bit of a story though. All my assorted keys that don't match the locks. Do any of you have things like this?
Yes.
I thought so. It's the type of thing you should throw out, but you just can't because someday you're going to find its mate. Another box, looking down from the top, it now forms a composition of odds and ends. So it's really about curves and right angles and so forth. It's like abstract art. And it's my little pencil cup, but looking straight down on it, the cup becomes a circle, and all of these pencils and the little thing you use to put your shoes on, they all become part of this little lyrical composition of angular objects. Now, here's something else that I worked on, probably started in 2013. I began to do sketches when I was doing travel workshops in outline and watercolor. And over the last 8 years, I've been developing it. I call it line and blob technique. So let's see what happens with this famous church called Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, designed by Antoni Gaudi. And there's my finished results. So I'm very attuned to the types of shapes I'm making. I'm letting them be free. And the lines are also free. I'm letting it all hang out, as Richard said before. And it enables me to do something very quickly. I'm not using a traditional approach to watercolor. So I'm going to take you on a very fast tour of how it came into being. Here's the outline sketch. Notice that the lines amble along just like we do when we're traveling and we're touring. We look at this building, we look at that woman, we look at that bench, that lamppost, that flag, the banner, and you just keep going. And that's what the lines do here. They just keep going, picking up things along the way without needing to be accurate. And here is a close-up of how the colors are blobbed in, a certain kind of a shape that I use, but it's very capricious, you know. I don't think I ever use angles with these paints because they're very friendly. You know, they're fun shapes. So that's the line and blob technique. I'll show you some other samples. This was a recent trip that I taught at in south of France. And we were heading out to the oyster farms out by the horizon. And in about 20 minutes, I was able to do this quick gesture line in ink and then blobs, always leaving white shapes. The white shapes are friendly to our imagination because we make them up. There was no white shape in the photograph anywhere here. But as you give yourself that kind of license to improvise and fabricate, all of a sudden the picture comes to life. It's coming to life through you.
I will say, Mark, you know, it presents, you know, I love the term line and blob, and it presents like you just blob it down. We had Emily Stedman present on watercolor. She uses a very similar technique. It takes a sort of masterful control of the amount of watercolor that you have on the brush, how you press it down, how the blob runs. It's free, but it's free within sort of restraints that takes a subtle hand, and it's obvious, you know, that you have that control and you get that sort of natural, organic look at the same time.
Exactly, that's very well said, Barry. And the blobs are different shapes, they're different sizes, different values, light to dark. So what you do with them is instrumental in communicating or messaging what you want, messaging. So it comes with practice. One of the people in the audience, Maureen, started out for the first time only a couple of months ago with this technique, and it just resonated with her. She has come so far. Her work is mesmerizing and motivating. So if you leave yourself open to it, it can really free your soul. I think I have another sample. Yeah. So I wanted to tell a story about this woman I saw when I was at a cafe in south of Italy. And she just came out to the casement doors. No, the swinging doors, with the shutters at the side. And her roses were in a planter in front of her window. And I thought, you know what? She actually had a little more of a smile than what you see here, but she was greeting the day. The old expression, come out and smell the roses, was personified in what I saw in that moment. I had a photograph and ended up working from the photograph, but I had to be very careful not to belabor it and let it be as fresh as the day was to her when she came through her window. Now, this next segment is about seeing shapes differently. I know the other part said that too, but here I'm using shapes as flat shapes, almost as if they're all, each color and each tone is cut out of a piece of colored paper. And when I'm talking about shapes, I find that this is a very direct way of doing that. That's a photograph, but the painting behind the model is abstract expressionistic, and there's a tension between the model and the painting that just is randomly hanging behind him. They talk to each other through the shapes. Now here's a photograph I took of ferns, which I took out of my polished presentation, but here, it was here. These geraniums, this is a painting from my photograph. And what was intriguing to me was the silhouette of the geraniums against the greenery, the verdant background, and with the rim of color. The only intense color is on the outside of the geraniums. And that was very dramatic and graphic to me. And I was happy to be able to recreate it. Turns out it was accepted into 2 shows in the same area of Long Island at the same time. They overlapped the shows by about a week, and I didn't realize that. So the judges had seen the same image. There was no way I could remove one early or bring another one late. I had to create the same painting twice so that it looked just like what the judge saw. And but I didn't want it to be totally identical. I made one thick with impasto, so it looked the same on the slide, but the actual painting was different. That was one of the scariest moments of my life. I didn't know what to do for days. This was a scene which was all about the twins, of course, 2 twins, and just their rhapsodizing over something as simple as a bottle of water and the sand. And mom just needed mom's legs. If I showed all of her, it would have minimized the boys. But just the fact that she's the great protector standing over them to make sure they don't get into any trouble or run away, that for me was the whole story. But again, the shapes are all flat shapes, sort of like puzzle shapes. And I just thought that they communicated fine without me doing any blending or anything like that.
It's also like Charles Schulz, the cartoonist for Peanuts. You know, you'd see the kids' world, but whenever you hear the adults speak, it's like blah, blah, blah. It's all garbled because you're in a kid's world. And here, this is a kid's world. You won't see too many adults doing this.
Yeah.
We just wish we could. And so having her topped off is sort of appropriate. It's not quite her world, but yes, she is a protector.
It's true. You have to wait till the beach is empty before you go out there with your pail and your water bottle. Yeah, but don't we wish we could? Okay. This was photographed in a gallery in Chelsea, and I took advantage of the silhouette of the visitor and compared it to the shapes in the painting behind him. His head is round, and the other shapes are all circles. So there's a synchronicity just because of the shapes. And it makes sense. If it's about shapes, then let it be about shapes. Treat it the same way. Seeing disposables. I've been very inspired by a photographer named Rosamund Purcell, who spent her whole career as a photographer shooting things like moldy books and old bones from animals from natural history museums, anything that was detritus, you know, corrupt, decomposed, decay. So here are a few things that I had done. Oh, this one is about, it's not quite about decay, but I just wanted to take simple things that were about to go into the waste paper basket and save them from that. So I took a piece of pepper that was left, you know, you eat all the other good parts, and this was left. And it's really the most interesting part of the pepper, but I wanted to treat it as though it's a piece of jewelry cast into the gold band or something. And the casting is on a piece of paper in this case, but I wanted to treat it with a lot of white space around it so we know that it's special, almost like royalty, you know, as simple and cartoony as it may be, it's being treated as royalty. Here's
Mark, that's a very, very interesting way of presenting a photo by sort of having that large white space, it forces you to come into it. You know, it brings the
Sure, sure.
intimacy.
And usually, you know, I will tell my students, do not create vignettes where your subject and everything is in the center, because then it's static. You know, nothing moves. But in this case, I felt it was appropriate. That's just a piece of tracing paper that I crumbled up. I laid it down on a 30 by 40 sheet of mat board. And it was just the fact that it's white on white, and the form of the crumbled piece of paper against the smooth white just fascinated me.
That's very smart, Mark. And I will comment, when Undine was showing her photographs, I wanted to say that she actually did that. She put an object pretty much in the middle. She had those slide or the steps in a landscape. And that's really asking for it. It's like a abstract painter, you know, doing 2 or 3 forms. When you reduce like that, it can be trouble. On the other hand, Undine's was beautiful. And so if you can achieve that, Stephen Shore achieved that in his photographs too. He's able to somehow break the rules. And I guess this is part of the out of the box and, you know, what people have been saying tonight. And you can break the rules. You can almost, you can do something a little deeper and richer. And so by even here, it does break some of the rules that we know. Go for the asymmetry. You know, you flatten everything up when you do this, but when it's done right, you know, it's very, very powerful.
Right, and the fact that you broke the rules kind of makes you snicker with joy when you're finished. Just like when I show my photographs and paintings together, it's like, okay, so there. As an old, I was taking a walk a couple of weeks ago, and there was this Snapple cap, the best stuff on earth, it said on it. And I'm just looking at the shape, the funky little shape after it's been run over by a truck. And I created a vignette to give it that spotlight, like it's on a stage or something. Seeing decay, now we're up to decay. Oh, yay, decay. All right, I have a nice color version of that too, which I put into the polished version, and then I lost everything. But I think in black and white, it gets the message across. It's all about circles. I call this one a two-ring circus. Just garbage. And that's, can you find the subject?
Yeah.
Right, it's the skeleton of a leaf. But it's almost a Where's Waldo type of thing. It's just the form, the veining of the leaf against the pattern of the pebbles that separate it.
You've also achieved a great texture there. That's a lot like Seb's work that he showed of that.
Yeah, that's right. Right, very true. Again, these are photos of things that are on the decline. At the Art Students League, where Sherry teaches, I decided to walk around the classroom and take photographs of their palettes. In many cases, they were using simple plastic picnic plates like this, which would have been tossed in the garbage. And it's sitting on a stool, which has gone through many, many years of casual splatter of paint. And for me, it could be like a cosmic painting, like looking at the universe. Every person's palette was beautiful. It was part of their personality. Sometimes you look at the palette and say, if only I could put that on my paper the same way. Okay, now how do we work with portraiture so it's not commonplace the way people typically look at a portrait? My first one, this is one of my favorites, was taken with me peering through the window of a closed barber shop. And had the barber been there and posed for me, we wouldn't know anything. I don't think we would have known as much about the barber as looking at his place in the barber shop where he puts all the photos of his life. You know, we can tell what he does. We see pictures of him when he was a young man in the war. We see his family. We see him with his first customers. And for me, although it's kind of like a composition of rectangles, it's also a story of somebody's life in just one small space. And the colors tell about the age as well, which is part of the story. Again, different ways of looking at pictures of people. This is the one that was on your announcement, Barry. I was in Provence. I went into this gallery, and this gentleman was the artist and owner of all the work in the gallery, along with his wife. And they sometimes painted together in tandem. You don't see that type of thing very, very often, you know, with their arms crossing over each other, and they were in total synchronicity with each other. But what I saw was a very proud artist, and he loved to talk to everyone who walked in. And I wanted to make sure that his hair and his beard became part of the painting. I wanted him to become part of his work. So, I mean, I didn't do any manipulation, but I just made sure that my colors were true and my cropping was good, so that I don't include anything that's not necessary. And I've also done a painting of the same image. Now here's the flat shape approach again too, because it's all about the colors, simple colors, very poster-like, and the lips. The lips were everything. So if I just used an actual photograph, it wouldn't have been as expressive as doing it this way. I always wished I could have done more serigraphy, but I never did. I never got around to it. So I'm able to do that through the photography and the painting now, seeing people differently.
Well, you definitely picked up on something Tom Wesselman figured out. You know, you can really do those lips and it can pop a painting.
Yeah, absolutely. The lips are powerful, aren't they?
Yeah, we've had a lot of people talk about eyes and hands before as well.
We're going to look at a couple of images where not just the face, but the body language tells the story. So I never take one picture if possible. I take several, and when it's right, when everything is going together, that's the one that I try to develop. In this case, you might notice that the shape of his cap is the same shape as the table and the shadow. And for me, the fact that you can't see his face tells me that he's weary. He's been in the sun all day long, and he's had it. So the body language has to speak. You know, normally you want to see the face. That's the commonplace way of going about a picture of a person. But sometimes not having the face can be that much more meaningful than including it. Another rule that one tries not to break is don't have your figures looking out of the picture, especially if they're on the side. In this case, I found that these two bench warmers were detached from the game and they're looking out, which emphasizes to me that they're not part of it. Who knows what they're thinking about?
Almost feels like a George Seurat in a way.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites. I did some Parisian scenes at the Tuileries, where all the people are out on the lawn, and I just kept thinking of Georges Seurat.
Let's show a few more slides, Mark, and then we'll open it up to our audience.
Okay, so I'll move very quickly then. And this is also about body language. I'm comparing two generations. The sedentary generation, like us, and the one that flops over the fence with no, actually no fear at all.
and they don't get hurt, but when we stand up from the bench, we get hurt.
Exactly. Exactly. I love big shapes in my work. Triangle here is what I was going for. I was looking down from the 5th floor of a hotel, and these girls had just finished looting some tourists, and they had their bags there and everything. It's great for a voyeur. Again, body language, very important, and having him become part of the form of the space around him. Seeing nature, I'm just going to travel right through. This one was all about the two genders, the male and the female. The male is doing everything he can to get her attention, and she couldn't care less. Some of us can relate to that. This was a challenge I gave myself to make nothing into something by putting a picture frame around it. So I went into the woods and I just laid it down to make whatever it was picture worthy. Okay, this is another way of looking at nature. Vignetting, seeing objects. Again, these are commonplace objects, but I'm trying to put them on a pedestal, so to speak, because of their shapes, the form, and the lighting. That's a pencil sharpener, actually. You put the pencil in the nose.
That's hysterical. That's
I
hysterical.
had to get a
I do want to read just two comments. This was about your out of the box comment question. Undine Groeger, who showed her art earlier, she said, for me, out of the box equals out of our boxes that are cameras and blank canvases. An interesting way to look at it. Susan Kazodoy Silkowitz says, out of the box being non-conforming.
Yeah, exactly.
And Wendy List responds to your work, Mark. She says, I really enjoy how you see things. The shapes and compositions work so well. And I'll add, you certainly show the talent of working geometrically with your circles, rectangles, things like that. And then those nature shots were quite beautiful and, you know, a different sensibility in them.
So I'm going to race through the rest of them. Using mediums. These are using acrylic gold and watercolor together, and that's something you're not supposed to do. I found a way to do that. The acrylic was gold acrylic, by the way. Seeing COVID, we'll wind up with that because we've been asking questions about how COVID has affected us. There I am painting my self-portrait in flat shapes. And afterwards I said, dummy, you should have put a mask on the painting. I should have painted a mask over the face, but nope. I could always do it another time. Anyway, I'll take any more questions you may have. That ends that presentation. Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Again, artists, you have much material, and I thank you for sort of condensing it for us. Let me open it up to questions and thoughts and anything anybody would like to say. Undine Groeger does say, I love how you frame the different topics for your art, which makes us look at things differently. I love your watercolors. You know, I think your key word, whether it was seeing people or seeing nature differently, was the important word that was in everything. And we had a performance artist last week, I believe it was last week, who emphasized she wants to shock people to get them to see things differently. She distills time and almost space. She does 36-hour performances. And as Undine wanted to engage the viewer and make it something for them, this performance artist wants to engage the viewer to wake them up to see differently. Roger says your art is interesting and fun. Hottest boxer, love the mixed media. And I'll open it up for a few more comments, anybody who'd like to?
These things that you photographed or painted, they're all around us, but you see them. See, very seldom, well, not near as often as you do, to see something like I had just on the drive-through at McDonald's, I just saw these colors. They just popped at me, the red and the green, you know, a truck, a tree. But these things are all around me. And I think this is going to help me look at them, look at these different things. Susan Silkowitz, you and I had a conversation about this years ago. Like I said, what do you see? And sometimes I'm not seeing these things that are in plain view. They're hiding in plain sight.
Nicely said, Roger. And first, I want to thank all the artists for coming tonight and presenting and sharing their art. We're all visual artists. It is challenging for us to speak about art when our language is about line, form, and color and many things. So thank you for sharing and opening up. A special thank you to Seb. How could we not have such a young artist come and join us, stay for the hour and a half and listen to everybody and present like a professional. Again, we're Artists Talk on Art. We're here every Monday. Become a part of it. Share your thoughts and ideas. We sort of come together as a tribe. We have people come in and out of our group, but we all share and grow from it. And I think we all learn from each other tonight, as we always do. Thank you all so much. This has been very rewarding for me. And I know it is for every artist that presents, because you get a lot. We don't get a lot of applause in the art world. It's sort of an important thing to get. It reinforces our direction, just as seeing other art by other artists and what their out of the boxes can open up our boxes too. So thank you all the presenters, bravo, and all the participants for giving ATOA your time. And you know, it's Artists Talk on Art, only when artists come and share. So thank you all, and come again.
Thank you, Barry.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great experience, really.
Thank you. Very interesting.
So nice to hear.
Okay. Good night. Thank you.